Hello, my name is James Berry and I'm a professional helicopter pilot and instructor working in the UK. If this is your first time watching my videos, this is part of a series of 7 steps on how to become a professional helicopter pilot. And we are now on step 7, the career path or specialisation. As you may have seen from the introductory video on this topic, this has been split into 3 parts. You've got the MEIR, the FIH and the immediate CPLH work. Now we've already covered the MEIR, so now with this video we're going to talk about the Flight Instructor Rating or FIH. What is a flight instructor or an FIH? Well, it is a bolt-on rating to your licence that allows you to make PPLs of your very own, to guide them through their very own training just like you were once upon a time. It is considered one of the hardest courses, probably just after the instrument rating itself, but it does open the door to some incredibly rewarding experiences and work. When you first become qualified as a flight instructor, you will have a limitation. You won't be able to send students solo without supervision. But other than that, it's an open door. You'll teach the simpler exercises to begin with, but it's much better if you're in a supervised and mentored environment. It'll bring your own flying on leaps and bounds, whereas a commercial pilot will practice their emergency procedures twice a year during their checks. You could be, in essence, doing it every single day. And the thing about having a student sitting next to you is that they can do many weird and wonderful things that can't really be replicated in the training environment. Ask any flight instructor, they have many stories of strange things students have done to them. The course in itself is 30 hours long and comprises 125 hours of ground instruction, and it's structured in a give and take sort of format where at points your FIC or flight course instructor will play the part of the student and you will teach them, and they'll play the part of instructor and teach you. So it'll be give and take, and it covers all of the exercises you covered throughout your PPLH and also the theoretical learning objectives. So you'll be doing theory board briefs as well. This course puts you into the left-hand seat of the helicopter, which is quite a jarring experience at first, but I promise over the length of it and then your further career you will get used to it, and eventually you'll come to a point where you actually prefer the left seat, which is a bit strange. You'll learn how to deal with many common student mistakes, but you cannot be prepared ever for all of them. That will only come through experience. The course culminates with a bit of a grueling assessment of competence. It encompasses both ground and airborne elements, and mine lasted about 11 hours. That's not always the standard, that's just how long mine took. It's difficult, but you can get through it, and the cost of the course at the end of 2024, when my research was made, between £20,000 and £24,000. My good friend and former boss, Paul White, the founder and head of training of Flying Pig and Elstree Helicopters, has kindly agreed to give us a bit of an interview to talk more about this path from his perspective. Take it away, Paul.
Hi, my name is Paul White. I'm the owner and head of training of Flying Pig and Elstree Helicopters. I've been a pilot for, gosh, it's always hard to work out now, best part of 27 years. And it's always been helicopters, although I have had a dabble here and there in aeroplanes. Well, ideally somebody that actually wants to teach. I don't feel it should be used as a way of just purely gaining hours, because it's very obvious to a student that you're with if you don't really want to be there because you want to do the flying instructor course, etc, etc. So yeah, it really wants to be somebody that I think wants to teach and wants to be a part of a student's journey. So I wouldn't recommend it necessarily for somebody that's purely just interested in being a commercial pilot. However, if they if they are interested and like to pass on their knowledge and experience and want to teach people, of course, it hones your skills, because we're constantly, as instructors, going over exercises, manoeuvres, emergency procedures on a very daily basis. So we really do refine our knowledge and ability of how to handle the helicopter. The cost, well, yeah, it's not quite how long is a piece of string, but you can figure, depending on exactly which route, which helicopter you learn to fly in, even which school, of course, because they'll have different prices, but you're probably not going to get a lot of change nowadays out of £100,000. There's lots of many good parts about doing the flying instructor course. It's one of the best bits is perhaps maybe realising or discovering the things you didn't actually really know about with flying helicopter. Now, I'd like to say that every student you teach is their knowledge is amazing and their abilities are amazing, but the truth is you can only usually get them to a certain level depending on the candidate, and it's a good level, of course it is. But the instructor course goes into so much more detail about how a helicopter's made and flies and all those sorts of things. So that's really great to improve your knowledge and flying skills. The worst part, there's probably a couple, I think, and that is realising that the instructor flying course is not just about receiving the briefing from your instructor, it's the giving back, the sudden realisation you've now got to be capable of regurgitating all this info and ability, etc, etc. So that's a little bit daunting, but I wouldn't say that's actually the worst part. Probably, if you're going to say the worst part would be the very end, the assessment of competencies. It can be quite grueling. It might be an all-day affair of a lot of questions and answers and those sorts of things, and then the flying element as well is quite tough. But just dig deep and you can make it. The advice is, well, I guess like any career path, have a good idea of exactly what you would like to do in aviation. We'll just say helicopters for a minute. If your heart's set on doing mountain rescue in Switzerland, then great. At least you've got an idea of potentially what route you wish to take. If your passion is you think is going to be in just teaching people, that's what you'd love to do, then again, it's much easier to determine the type of route. So I guess try and have a bit of an idea, a focus on what you'd like to achieve. But also, of course, if you were to look at becoming a professional pilot, either instructor or commercial pilot or both, you need to have a good overview of it all, but there's an awful lot. So maybe perhaps set goals along the way to try and reach, so that you don't feel too disheartened, because it's a big mountain to climb, but it's perfectly doable. So yeah, I think take it in stages, and do your research on things like the helicopter you'd like to learn to fly in initially, and so forth, and the flying schools. You want to make sure you're in a good, comfortable environment, both in the cockpit of the helicopter, but also the school. Different schools suit different people. You might be somebody that would fare far better in a much smaller school, far more personal touch, etc. Or you might be one of these people that's far better in a big organisation. You're in amongst a big group of people, and you churn through it quickly. So yeah, do your research. There's always quite a lot I'd like to say, I guess. Specifically about being an instructor, yeah, I mean, I love it. It's fantastic. All these years later, I'm very happy with what I do. It's so rewarding. I think I'm very, very lucky, to be able to fly helicopters anyway. It's great. But to be part of a lot of people's journey, our I'm going to say customers for the minute, our students, they end up being, a lot of them, some of our great best friends. We stay in contact, and I've been privileged to be a part of their journey, which is usually a dream. I can think of quite a number of students that they've told me their story. They've always wanted to learn to fly helicopters, no aspiration necessarily of getting a job doing it, etc. But they've always wanted to learn to fly, but it's only in maybe their latter years that they've got the finances and the time available, but it's been that burning desire, and I get to be a part of that journey and help them fulfill their dreams. So amazing, incredibly rewarding. Good luck.
Thank you, Paul, for your time and advice. Now, before we wrap up, I feel it's important that I mention some realities of the job and the course. Now, look, once you get employed, the pay, it's not great. When you compare it to other positions in the aviation industry, it doesn't come out on top, at least not in the beginning. There are always better offers than others, so make sure you find the right one that works for you. But I'm going to tell you about my experience. I'd say I did relatively well as a flight instructor. After about a year and a half of working in the industry, I was on £65 per flying hour, and I averaged throughout the year 60 hours a month. Now, I was at a very good school, they were busy and they kept me busy and they looked after me. It's not always that case, and it can be feast or famine. That is really important to know, and I didn't know that my first year, and I did fall foul of it. Typically you can get a lot done in the summer, and you find that you can be quite successful there with the amount of flying you do, and in the winter it can really trail off due to weather and many other factors. So it's self-employed. Almost all of it is self-employed, or at least when I was doing it. So that means no fly, no pay. You get paid for what you are able to fly. So make sure you budget for that feast or famine situation. The flying industry always needs instructors. One thing I would say is that once you are qualified, it won't be difficult for you to find a job. It shouldn't be. There is a very noticeable shortage of them. The work can be extremely rewarding if you enjoy the development of others and seeing them develop along with your own skills as well. Plus, there are often trips and things that schools do which are basically just wonderful days out without any of the normal commercial stresses of other kinds of helicopter flying. It's not a bad deal from that perspective. There's a lot of room to expand as an instructor, including teaching commercial students, teaching type ratings, becoming an examiner, eventually teaching on multi-engine helicopters. You can span an entire career and be successful in just the instructor segment of the industry. However, this career path can be fraught with recurrent training and revalidations and renewals. For example, every aircraft you'll need to have a proficiency check on once a year. Your flight instructor rating will need to be revalidated every 3 years. And of course, as you go on and gain more strings to your bow and more qualifications, this will only increase all of these checks and things that you have to get done. And from a self-employed perspective, unless you negotiate a deal with your main employer, you may be paying for all of these yourself. So bear that in mind and factor it into your planning. Back to the assessment. I need to take back to that because there's an important part, a significant part, and a common stumbling block during this is theoretical knowledge. You need to be well versed up on every single learning objective there is for the PPLH theory course. Now, the examiner will only test you on one sort of segment or learning objective from each of the 9 subjects, but they can ask you anything. So you need to know it all, and to a greater detail than the PPLH syllabus. You need to know it to a commercial level. Having done your ATPL studies, it's basically being able to bring that knowledge back, condense it down into an understandable packet and deliver it as per a board brief or a lesson. Often people find that having that entire picture of information in their head at all times available to them is quite difficult, but that's fine. You can use reference books. I heavily recommend before doing your FI course that you read Phil Croucher's book on the PPLH theory syllabus. There is also a fantastic book, Principles of Helicopter Flight by Wagendonk. I will put links to these books in the description of this video. I heavily recommend you read them before going in and keep them as reference books. going forward. As you may know, I picked this path from day one, and I don't regret that decision one little bit. I have seen other pilots grow, and they've gone on to do other studies, some of them going on to commercial, and it is an incredibly rewarding experience, and it brings my own flying into a much higher standard. One last thing that I found quite helpful, and if you have patient friends and family, or even you can go on Facebook groups, and I did that as well, and find people who would be willing to let you practice going through theory lessons and exercise board briefs on them. Even if they're not interested in aviation itself, it can help you find the flow of your own teaching style. That marks the end of my video. If you're interested in other pathways after the CPLH course, the next video will be on immediate CPLH or commercial work. So stay tuned for that one. If you need any help with your own aviation or your own instructing, please get in touch with me. Leave comments on the videos, subscribe, interact with me. It's very helpful. Ask me questions about things that you want to know. I do offer lessons on Superprof. Feel free to go there, book me in, and you can have some one-on-one time with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.